U.S. President Donald Trump says he's terminating all discussions on trade with Canada after Ottawa confirmed it is moving ahead with a digital services tax aimed at major tech companies.
U.S. President Donald Trump says most trade deals will be finished by August 1st. But as for us,
we haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs.
In a stunning escalation, U.S. President Donald Trump has abruptly terminated all trade talks with Canada, a close ally now being labeled a trade adversary. The trigger? Ottawa's move to implement a digital services tax aimed at major American tech companies. But Washington didn't just walk away. It struck back hard, signaling tariffs of up to 35% on all Canadian imports. And with that, Canada's economy was jolted. But something even bigger is unfolding beneath the surface, a quiet energy revolution that could change the global balance of power. On June 30th, 2025, Canada launched its first ever shipment of liquefied natural gas to Asia, bypassing the United States entirely. The destination? Japan and China. This isn't just about gas, it's about independence. For more than 30 years, Canada's natural gas exports flowed almost exclusively through U.S. pipelines. Nearly 9 billion cubic feet of gas a day, worth over $8 billion annually, made its way south. Canada was locked into a single customer, the United States. And with that dependency came vulnerability to U.S. demand, infrastructure, and now, political retaliation. Trump's tariffs, including a 10% duty on Canadian energy, hit hard. Canadian producers already sold at a discount compared to U.S. counterparts. With the new trade war, margins collapsed further. Long-term contracts came under threat. And that's when Canada acted, not with protests, but with pipelines to the Pacific. The launch of LNG exports to Asia marked the beginning of a seismic shift. For the first time, Canada has unlocked direct access to global energy markets. And that changes everything. This energy pivot isn't just economic, it's geopolitical. By supplying LNG to Asia, Canada is positioning itself as a global energy player, not a junior partner. The message to Washington is clear: Canada won't be cornered. In fact, Ottawa is now in talks with Tokyo and Seoul for long-term supply agreements, and Beijing has expressed interest in expanding its energy ties with Canada. As Trump threatens to crush the Canadian economy, reality tells a different story. Canada isn't folding, it's diversifying. And the global energy map is being redrawn. If the US thought Canada would always play second fiddle, this LNG launch says otherwise. It was a wake-up call that shattered Canada's decades-long dependence on a single energy customer, the United States. And the real turning point? A coastal town in British Columbia, Kitimat, where the $40 billion LNG Canada project, the largest private investment in Canadian history, just roared to life. This cutting-edge terminal now allows Canada to do something it's never done before: supercool and compress natural gas into liquid form at minus 165 degrees Celsius, shrinking its volume 600-fold so it can be loaded onto tankers and shipped across the globe. This isn't just infrastructure, it's liberation. For decades, Canadian gas could only travel south by pipeline, selling at a discount to U.S. buyers. But now, the game has changed. LNG Canada sits right on the Pacific, meaning its tankers can reach Northeast Asia in just 10 days, about half the time it takes U.S. exports from the Gulf Coast, which must navigate the congested Panama Canal. That time advantage slashes shipping costs, avoids choke points, and gives Canada a serious edge. The very first cargo, loaded onto the tanker Gaslog Glasgow, set sail for Asia, inaugurating a faster, more resilient maritime corridor. The implications are massive. Japan, South Korea, and China, three of the world's top LNG consumers, are all scrambling for long-term, reliable supply. Canada is now positioned to meet that demand directly, on its own terms, at premium prices. For the first time, Canadian gas isn't trapped by U.S. politics, pipelines, or pricing. And the timing couldn't be better. Japan plans to boost LNG imports by 20 million tons annually by 2026 as it transitions away from coal and nuclear. South Korea is expanding its LNG storage capacity by 50% over the next decade to avoid winter shortages. These are not temporary buyers. They're building for the long haul. Canada is no longer just an energy appendage of the US. It's becoming a global supplier, and this energy pivot is a quiet revolution. With one export terminal and one voyage, Canada is rewriting the rules of the game, not just for its economy, but for the balance of power in global energy. Stability is exactly what the market ordered. But this is no ordinary energy project. LNG Canada, headquartered in Kitimat, British Columbia, represents not just a new gas supply, but a new model of resource development. Over 7 years of construction, it created more than 50,000 Canadian jobs and injected nearly $6 billion into local and Indigenous businesses, including unprecedented equity ownership by the Haisla Nation. That's right. The very people whose land hosts the terminal aren't just stakeholders, they're partners. The Haisla hold equity in the Coastal GasLink pipeline, a 700-kilometer artery delivering gas straight from British Columbia's interior to the Pacific coast. That kind of ownership is historic, a groundbreaking model for Indigenous participation that could reshape Canada's entire energy future. But it doesn't stop there. LNG Canada is also a triumph of clean technology. Unlike many fossil fuel operations, the entire liquefaction process is powered by hydroelectricity, not by burning gas. That means dramatically lower emissions. With 2 massive LNG processing trains capable of chilling 14 million tons of gas per year, this facility is positioned to be one of the cleanest, if not the cleanest, LNG export terminals on the planet. Even more remarkable, many of the core components were engineered in Japan and the US specifically to minimize methane leaks and maximize efficiency. And that matters, not just morally, but competitively. Asia and Europe's buyers are no longer just buying gas, they're buying the carbon footprint that comes with it. And Canadian LNG, backed by tight regulations and clean hydropower, has a greener pedigree than many of its rivals. As Canada builds this energy bridge to the Pacific, it's not just cutting the cord with the US, it's launching itself into a global leadership role, one LNG shipment at a time. The question now isn't whether Canada can compete globally. It's how long before other nations start copying its model. However, this landmark project wasn't built without overcoming massive hurdles, and the road to Kitimat, British Columbia, was anything but smooth. Constructing a $40 billion LNG terminal in one of North America's most remote and rugged regions proved to be a Herculean task. Harsh weather, mountainous terrain, and the need to build roads, housing, and infrastructure from scratch turned the site into a logistical challenge of epic proportions. On top of that, Canada's rigorous environmental regulations meant developers face layer upon layer of reviews. Important safeguards, yes, but costly and time-consuming. Compared to the flat, infrastructure-rich U.S. Gulf Coast, building in Canada was a far more expensive gamble. To help level the playing field, British Columbia's government stepped in with targeted incentives, including brakes on carbon and sales taxes, worth hundreds of millions. These subsidies helped absorb cost overruns and kept the project commercially viable as budgets ballooned. But those public incentives sparked fierce debate. Critics argued taxpayer money shouldn't prop up fossil fuel infrastructure during a climate crisis, and they demanded guarantees that ordinary Canadians would share in the profits. The controversy highlighted the fine line governments walk when trying to attract massive private investment without giving away too much. Still, now that the terminal is operational, the payoff is becoming clear. LNG Canada is expected to ramp up steadily through 2026, with a goal of shipping around 170 cargoes per year. Giant tankers loaded with chilled Canadian gas are set to become a regular sight as they navigate the fjords of British Columbia en route to ports like Yokohama, Busan, and Shanghai. Every shipment chips away at Canada's dependence on U.S. pipelines, reduces exposure to Washington's unpredictable trade politics, and brings in premium revenue from Asian buyers. But here's where it gets even bigger. The consortium behind the project is already preparing for Phase 2. If approved, this expansion would double the facility's output from 14 to 28 million tons per year, launching Canada into the global top 5 of LNG exporters. That's right, a country that, just months ago, had zero overseas shipments could soon stand shoulder to shoulder with giants like Qatar, Australia, and the United States. It's a staggering leap that proves this pivot to Asia isn't just strategic, it's transformative. Canada is no longer just a junior energy partner to the US. It's emerging as a global LNG power in its own right, with the infrastructure, partners, and ambition to match.